We have coca and bacilli. So this is bacilli, and disease caused by this is known as brucellosis. So it is also the disease also known is by the name of Malta fever, Maltese fever, Mediterranean fever, undulant fever. So sometimes you may get a question like write short note on undulant fever. So you need to know the other names of this particular disease. So this brucella is classified on the basis of his CO2 requirement. You know that some bacteria they require the capnophilic, they require CO2 for its growth, 5 to 10%. Then whether they produce hydrogen H2S or not. Some bacteria they produce H2S, some they don't produce. Then the sensitivity to various dyes. Then the by monospecific sera. Then phage typing. So the basis of phage they are classified. Then according to their oxidative metabolic state. So these are the various ways by which we can classify the brucella species. So there are three important species: Brucella melitensis, Brucella abortus, and Brucella suis. So Brucella melitensis is the one which is principal pathogen. The principal host is goat and sheep, and it is the most pathogenic of all the Brucella. So out of these three main Brucella abortus, melitensis, and suis, the Brucella melitensis is the one which is pathogenic in humans, and this is related to the consumption of unpasteurized milk or milk products from the infected animal. Right, so it is a zoonotic disease. So Brucella is a zoonotic disease. So you all know what is a zoonotic disease. So Brucella melitensis is one which is most pathogenic. Then Brucella abortus, the principal host is cattle, and the Brucella suis, the principal host is swine. And Brucella canis, this is generally seen in the individuals. The principal host is dog. This is generally seen in individuals who come in contact with dogs or breeders, the veterinary staffs who assist with birthing of dogs. They are at a higher risk of becoming infected by Brucella canis. So pathogen, it's an intracellular pathogen, right? And you should know the other examples of intracellular pathogen. And it disinfects your reticuloendothelial system. So this bacteria can be destroyed by heat at 60 degrees centigrade in 10 minutes. That means it can be destroyed by pasteurization. It can also be destroyed by 1% phenol in for 15 minutes. And this bacteria, it remains viable for 10 days in refrigerated milk, up till 30 days in ice cream, 4 months in butter, and it remains in urine for 6 days, 6 weeks in dust, and 10 weeks in water. So why this is important is that because as I told you, this occurs because of consumption of unpasteurized milk or the milk products. So pasteurization, if the milk is not as unpasteurized or is not pasteurized properly, then if the animal is infected, so the chances of brucellosis increases. So that is why this is important. So that is why pasteurization of milk is important in order to kill this particular pathogen. Now coming to the antigenic structure, it has two main somatic antigens, A and M, and they are present in different amounts. So antigen A is dominant in Brucella abortus, and it is like 20 times more in Brucella melitensis, and M antigen it's more in the Brucella melitensis, right? And Brucella suis, it has intermediate antigenic pattern. So we can test these antigenic we can test these antigenic structures with the help of agglutination reaction, right? But sometimes they give false positive result in case if there is Vibrio cholerae or E. coli, so they cross react. So sometimes they give false positive in these infections as well, right? And another thing is phage typing. We can go for phage typing, where we can type these organisms with the help of this particular phage. So phage typing is also these are how we do the antigenic typing. So one is we can go by fast typing. We can detect them by agglutination reaction, which is very commonly done, right? So if we this table basically shows that what are the distinguishing features. So melitensis, it occurs, the host is sheep, Brucella abortis cattle, Su is swine, and the antigenic A is antigen mode in Brucella abortis, M is in this in Brucella melitensis, and these have various biotypes. So like Brucella melitensis, it has 3 biotypes. Brucella abortis, it has 9 biotypes, and Brucella suis, it has 4 biotypes. And Brucella suis strains which produce H2S, they are known as American strain, and those which don't produce H2S, they are known as Danish strain. So these are the various biotypes, and this is how, the distinguishing features, how we can determine the which Brucella species is causing disease. So what is the portal of entry? The most common portal of entry is through ingestion of contaminated animal products, right? Often raw milk or its derivatives. So raw milk is, ingestion of raw milk is the most important cause of brucellosis. So the oral entry is through raw milk or vegetable which are contaminated with the feces or the urine of infected animal. If you consume, then it may lead to brucellosis. Then it can also occur by inhalation of the bacteria in rare cases, or the contamination of your mucosa or conjunctiva. The infection can occur through the ingestion and mucosal or skin contamination. It may also lead to brucellosis. Like percutaneous infection through skin abrasion may occur through accidental inoculation. That may be also responsible for that also is one of the portal of entry, the percutaneous infection. Then it has been seen that person to person infection is rare. So the mode of infection is, need to remember, is that ingestion of raw milk, that is the unpasteurized milk or any of the infected milk products or the milk products from an infected animal, right? Or it can be through direct contact. When you come in contact with infected animal tissue, generally it is seen in butchers and dairy workers, veterinary staffs, and all. They are at a high risk of developing this disease. So what is the incubation period? It is acute. It has acute or subacute. It is a acute or subacute disease which follows incubation period, which can vary from 1 week to 6 weeks and even up to months. So the incubation period is actually depends upon the strain of which strain is infecting. Then it also depends upon the size of inoculum, then route of infection, and obviously the immunity, the resistance of the host. So incubation period varies from 1 week to 6 weeks, and it can go up to even months. So in human infection, there are mainly of 2 types. There are 3 types. There latent infection. Here there is no clinical evidence is there of disease, and this can only be detected by serological examination, right? Then there is acute brucellosis. Here there is bacteremia. This is or known as a subacute brucellosis. Here there is undulant fever or Malta fever. It is also known as the undulant fever, Malta fever, the acute fever, and it is associated with prolonged bacteremia. You know what is bacteremia? When the bacteria is present in the blood, it's known as bacteremia. Then the chronic brucellosis, this stage is non-bacteremic, and here symptoms generally occur because of the state of hypersensitivity. So disease in human, that is brucellosis, which is also known as undulant fever, Malta fever, these are characterized by acute bacteremic phase. So there is bacteremic phase which you can see in the acute phase, which is later followed by chronic phase where there will be no bacteremia seen, and it may go up to many years, and chronic phase can involve many tissues in the. So acute brucellosis, also known as undulant fever, there is prolonged bacteremia, and the patient will present with irregular fever. There will be muscular and articular pain. And in chronic brucellosis, there is no bacteremia. There will be low-grade infection with periodic exacerbation, and this is generally related to the state of hypersensitivity in the patient. So there will be no pyrexia, but there could be other symptoms like joint pain, sweating, so on and so forth. And this particular illness, it's a chronic. It may last for years. So coming to the epidemiology, This disease occurs worldwide, and its major endemic area is in the Mediterranean basin. That is why the name is also Mediterranean fever it causes. Then Arabian Gulf, Indian subcontinent, and so on and so forth. And Brucella minitis is a species, the most common, which infects the human. So how you will diagnose this particular infection? So clinical diagnosis is impossible because the symptoms are not very specific. So that is why the laboratory aid is very essential. So these are the various modalities by which we can diagnose the infection: by culture, serology, hypersensitivity tests. Like in other disease which you have, the pattern is same. This is how we detect any pathogen. Then the molecular tests, non-specific tests, animal inoculation. So with specimen, the blood is the specimen of that we have to take. It's the most definitive method for diagnosis of acute brucellosis. So we go for blood culture. So blood should be taken for culture. Then we can also take biopsy materials for culture, like lymph nodes, CSF, urine, so on and so forth, abscess, etc. Then obviously for serological diagnosis, we can take serum where we can detect antigen and antibody. So culture, we can isolate organism from blood culture or from the bone marrow, aspirate. And as I told you, blood culture is most definitive for diagnosis. So we collect the blood, we take the blood, and blood is need to be collected during the fever phase, during the pyroxyle phase, because the chances of isolation of bacteria is more during that time. So we'll take the blood, we collect it in a blood culture bottle. So we have these blood culture bottles. We take 5 to 10 ml of blood and we put it in a blood culture bottle. So that blood culture bottle has specific media which promotes the growth of this bacteria. So it may have streptococcus soy broth or serum dextrose broth, and then we incubate this blood culture bottle in the incubator in the presence of 5 to 10% CO2. And then after some time, after 3 to 5 days, we do subcultures, right? We take that bottle out, we subculture it on blood agar, and then we incubate that blood agar plate in the 37 degrees centigrade aerobically. And we do it until 8 weeks. Because if no growth occurs after 8 weeks, then we discard it. Let me say that it's a negative, that no bacteria is isolated. So up till 8 weeks, we have to see the blood culture, right? So that is one method. I am sure you must have been told about what is the blood culture bottle, the system which it has, the media which the blood culture bottle contains, right? So one is the conventional method, which is we use a blood culture bottle. Another, since it may take longer time, because this particular brucella, the pathogen, it may take long time to grow. That is why we have to keep your conventional blood culture bottle up to 8 weeks, because it has been said the bacteria may grow, in a month. So that is why it is advised to keep the bottle up to 8 weeks. So negative culture brucella do not exclude the disease, because brucella can be cultivated from patient only during the acute phase of illness. So this is important. So have to collect your sample during the acute phase. The patient is having pyroxyle phase, right? So one is the conventional blood culture method. Another method is Castaneda method. So in Castaneda method, we use biphasic medium. So this is a biphasic medium. Biphasic means it has a broth, liquid media as well as solid media. The solid media is a little slant, and we put a sample in this and then we incubate it. We put the sample, we incubate the bottle in upright position. And what is the use of this agar? Since I told you that in conventional you have to subculture it after 3 to 5 days, so chances of contamination increases, because you have to open the bottle, you take out the sample, the chance you have to put the needle, take out the sample, the chance of contamination increases. So advantage of Castaneda method is that since it has a solid media, so what we do is we slant the bottle so that the media go on spread over this. Then again we incubate this bottle in upright position. So what will happen is the bacteria will grow in the agar, the solid agar. So advantage is that you don't have to subculture it on the other media. You can do it in this. So this will decrease the chances of contamination. So that is why the one of the important method is Castaneda method of blood culture. And it's, you need to remember is that it's a biphasic media. Biphasic means that it is a solid and the liquid. And the colony appear on the agar slant, right? And advantage is that the chances of contamination and the risk of infection to laboratory workers is reduced in this case. So we can go for the Castaneda method of blood culture. So you will read this method in other chapter also. It is wherever we can, you will going to read it in typhoid disease, where we subculture it, where we look for salmonella. So that also we use this method, and in various other method in fungal infections and all, we go for this system biphasic medium. So that is one. This is one method. Then we can go for automated system. We can go for BACTEC, BACTI alert methods. These are rapid methods. The bottles are available. There's automated system, and they will the sample in that become positive within 7 days. So we can go for the automated system also, right? So then we culture it. So culture, they grow on ordinary media, but the growth is scanty. So we can enrich that media with glucose, serum, or liver extract, and we can enhance the growth. So we can use medias like dextrose, serum dextrose agar, serum potato infusion agar, and we grow in that. So colonies there on solid media, they're small, moist, and translucent. These are strict aerobes, right? And they require, some of the species like Brucella abortus, it requires 5 to 10% of CO2. So it is capnophilic. The normal media's growth is slow and scanty, as I told you, and we can enrich it, we enrich the media, and these are the various medias which can be used. So blood culture positivity is actually positive only in 30 to 50% of the cases, even when the repeat samples are tested. So this is little difficult to diagnose. Then identification, these are gram-negative cocobacilli. You know, cocobacilli, there's a bacilli, there's cocci, and these are cocobacilli. These are short rod which will appear as it will not appear as a cocci also, it will not appear as a bacilli also, something in between. Then these are non-motile, they're non-capsulated, non-sporing, non-acid fast bacteria, and they don't ferment any carbohydrate. These are catalase positive, oxidase positive, right? Urease positive and nitrate positive. So I'm sure you must have had lectures on biochemical reactions. So there is a catalase test, and these are the various biochemicals by which we can identify the bacteria to certain species level. So these are the characteristics. So it is catalase positive, oxidase positive, urease positive, and nitrate positive. Now coming to the serology, this is the main laboratory method for diagnosis. And in this, basically, we look for various, antibodies like IgG, IgM, and IgA. So IgM, it appears within 7 to 10 days after clinical infection, and as the disease progresses, IgM antibodies, they decline, and then IgG appears and they remain, persist for longer period. So if you're diagnosing chronic brucellosis, then you have to look for IgG because it's a chronic disease. So IgG will be seen in chronic brucellosis, and IgM, it will not be detected in chronic diseases. So IgM is seen in acute phase, in acute brucellosis. So we can go for an agglutination test, which identifies IgG, IgM antibody, and IgA is basically, it is studies, and this basically prevent agglutination reaction. So we generally, through agglutination, we detect IgM antibody, and we can detect IgG antibody. So we basically go for standard agglutination test. So if you recall your agglutination chapter, I'm sure bataya hoga, there is something known as SAT, which is done for in case of brucella. It is simple agglutination method test which is done in tubes. So what we do is we take patient serum, right, and we make dilutions of it, equal dilutions in two-fold dilutions, like 1:20, up till 1:64, 640, and then we add our antigen. So our serum will contain antibodies, right? So in tubes, we will equally distribute them in serial dilution, and then we will add our antigen on it, which is a killed suspension of standard strain of Brucella abortus. So this is the antigen which we take, right? Then we put it, we incubate the tubes at 37 degrees centigrade for 24 hours, and then we look for the agglutination, right? And 1:60 is basically presumptive evidence of Brucella infections. But SAT can also give false negative result, which can happen in case of prozone phenomena. So that is why you must, I'm sure you know what is prozone phenomena. What happens is that is why, because to, in order to get rid of prozone phenomena, we have to make various serial dilutions. Otherwise, this will lead to prozone phenomena and our SAT, our test will become negative. So this thing is very important. In order to avoid the false negative test, several serial dilution is required. And along with this, it also has blocking antibodies. These blocking antibodies can also lead to false negative because it will prevent the agglutination. So in order to remove this, we need to heat the serum, at 55 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. So this will remove our blocking antibodies, and our test will, it will not give the false positive test. So false positive can also has also been seen in cholera, because cholera-induced agglutinins are removed. So therefore, we remove the cholera-induced agglutinins by, we treat the sample with mercaptoethanol. Then false positive. So this is false positive. Okay, it can be seen in cholera, it can be seen in tularemia, Yersinia infections, and immunization. Right. And so SAT is one important test which is done in this, which is tube agglutination method, right? And the main role of diagnosis to diagnose acute infection is basically we detect IgM antibodies, because that will appear in the acute infection. So both IgM and IgG appear in 7 to 10 days after onset of clinical infections. In chronic, there will be no IgM, only IgG. And IgG and IgM may act as a blocking antibodies. So agglutination tests, they mainly they identify IgM antibodies, right? And we can also look for the complement fixation test, which is useful in chronic cases to detect IgG. By ELISA, we can detect both acute and chronic. We can detect IgG and IgM separately. If IgG आ रहा है तो फिर वो chronic हो गया, IgM है तो वो that will tell us the acute phase. Apart from this, we can go for skin test, delayed hypersensitivity test. This is not diagnostic for acute brucellosis because it may show prior sensitization to antigen. So this is generally not done. We go for the serological test for diagnosis of brucella. So how you will so that was in humans. So how you can diagnose the infection in animal? So we can go for various tests, like we can microscopically identify in pathological sample, right? We can go for direct microscopy. We can use suitable stains or immunofluorescence method. Then we can use agglutination test in animal samples, like rapid plate agglutination test. There is something known as Rose Bengal card test and Way agglutination test, which detects antibody in the milk. So what is milk ring test is that we take the milk, the infected milk, we take when we are suspected in a dairy, or we pool the milk of all the animals, we pool it, then we take the milk, we add the antigen, Brucella abortus antigen, then we add the hematoxylin dye and water, and we incubate it, we put it in a water bath at 70 degrees centigrade for some time, 40 to 50 minutes. So the blue ring is formed at the top because antibody is there. We have added antigen Brucella abortus, so it will combine and it will form the blue ring which is seen on the top. So this is a positive test. And if the antibody is not present in the milk, then the whole milk will uniformly turn blue. So this is one method, milk ring test, which we can do on milk samples in order to detect this pathogen. Then there is Rose Bengal card test. It is a agglutination method. We take the sample, on that we add our antigen, which is Brucella abortus antigen, which is tagged with a dye, Rose Bengal dye, and then if antibody is there in our sample, then obviously agglutination will take place, and this is how we detect the uh, uh, antibodies in the particular sample, in animal sample. So this is a Rose Bengal test, which can be done in it employs for the diagnosis of brucellosis and basically cattle. Then PCR is another tool which can detect brucella species in human blood with the help of PCR. So prophylaxis, checking brucellosis in dairy animals in development of brucella-free herds. Then pasteurization of milk is very important in order to prevent infection, brucellosis. Then vaccine, Brucella abortus strain 19 vaccine is available. It's for the cattle. And for the occupational, if there's occupational risk of exposure, then attenuated live vaccine which contain Brucella abortus strain, it can be given intradermally, followed by the booster dose. So, and the treatment, doxycycline is a drug of choice for 45 days with streptomycin, which is given intramuscularly. And in children, we go for cotrimoxazole along with the rifampicin or gentamicin. Relapse is also been seen in this. So 10% of patients, they show relapse after therapy. So most relapse occurs within 3 months following therapy, and it may also occur within 6 months. So relapse is something which also been seen in case of brucellosis. So this was all about brucellosis. So you need to remember it's a zoonotic disease caused by the mode of infection is ingestion of raw milk, unpasteurized milk containing this or the milk products. And important thing which you need to remember in this is SAT, because this we identified by serological method. SAT, which is agglutination method test, we employ that in this. Now the other is Borrelia. So borreliosis, it is a disease caused by Borrelia, and Borrelia is basically spirochete. So spirochete is another class of bacteria. It is spiral-like, as the name suggests, spirochete. And it has, their main 3 species are there. So Borrelia is one of the species. It is 10 to 13 micron in length, and it contains lesser number of spirals. So this particular spirochete, it has Treponema pallidum, which causes syphilis. It has Borrelia, which causes relapsive fever. It has Leptospira. So these 3 are all spirochete main species, and they are thin, long with spirals. So Borrelia as such, they have lesser number of spirals as compared to spirochetes. So most of the species most of the species of Borrelia are commensals on the buccal and genital mucosa, and the few pathogenic species to man, that is Borrelia recurrentis, which causes epidemic relapsing fever. Borrelia burgdorferi causes Lyme disease, and Borrelia vincenti, which causes ulcerative gingiostomatitis, also known as Vincent angina. So these 3 are the important species of Borrelia, which are pathogenic. So what is relapsing fever? So Borrelia causes relapsing fever, right? Borrelia recurrentis, it causes epidemic, causes relapsing fever. So this relapsing fever, as the name suggests, there is recurrent episodes of fever which occur. And these non-specific symptoms following exposure to insect vector, which carry the Borrelia. So relapsing fever is basically 2 main types: epidemic relapsing fever and endemic relapsing fever. So epidemic relapsing fever is caused by Borrelia recurrentis, and it is transmitted by louse. So there is a vector involved in this. So it is transmitted by louse. Now, epidemic relapsing fever, it is caused by Borrelia species other than Borrelia recurrentis, such as Borrelia duttonii and but Borrelia hermsii, and so on and so forth, and it is transmitted by tick. So this is the difference. So this it is, we do ask questions in Viva like epidemic relapsing fever is caused by which species and transmitted by which vector. So epidemic louse से होता है और endemic tick से होता है. You need to memorize it. The pathogenesis is it's a vector-borne disease, so mode of transmission is by the bite. Epidemic relapsing fever transmitted by human body louse, which is Pediculus humanus, is a species, and it is introduced by crushing of the louse. Louse is there, we scratch it, we crush it, and there is a deposition of numbers of spirochetes on the abraded skin and the mucous membrane. Right? So, in case of epidemic typhus, the disease includes by crushing of the lice. Whereas case of the endemic relapsing fever, it is by the bite of infected tick. So from the inoculated side, the bacteria it spreads and lead to bacteremia, where there is episodes of fever will take place. And important thing we should need to remember is that Borrelia surface antigen, they undergo various antigenic variations. So that because of which there is a relapse of fever. So Borrelia rarely undergo antigenic variations in vivo, and this is responsible for the occurrence of relapses of the disease. And this, this go on repeating. So what will happen after the number of relapses? There is, there is a recovery due to development of antibodies against all the antigenic variants. So until then, the relapse will take place. Then recovery will occur when the antibodies are formed against all the antigenic variants. So this particular bacteria shows antigenic variation, which is responsible for relapses. That is why the name is relapse fever. So each time new antigens are produced, it invades the host immune system, leading to repeated bacteremia and repeated, recurrent febrile episodes. So clinical manifestations, the incubation period is about 7 to 10 days, and the disease is characterized by recurrent febrile episodes will last days and occur. There is a 3 to 5 days, and there is a intervening period of afebrile. Then again, the episode increases. So here the patient will have febrile episode, sudden onset, and along with it, there will be petechiae, epistaxis. Then blood tint sputum is seen in case of epidemic relapsing fever. Along with this, it may also involve your neurological system, where the patient will present with meningitis, seizures, paraplegia, or psychosis. So, how can we diagnose this? We have to we take the blood sample, right, and that to be collected during febrile period. Right, we take the blood sample, we can go for microscopy, we make smears, thick and thin smear, and we stain it with Giemsa, and we look for these spiral organisms, these bacteria, right? So this is basically a slide showing these are the spirochetes. So Borrelia, they are loose, they are motile, and they have these loose spirals, 5 to 8 irregular spirals at an interval of 2 micron. And they, have these pointed ends. So basically, we look for these Borrelia, and they stain well with the Giemsa and right stain. Okay. That is one method. We can go for direct microscopy, or we can go for, direct fluorescent antibody test, DAF. We can go for direct fluorescent antibody test using monoclonal antibody. So this will, we can do the species identification with the help of DAF. And then these are motile organisms, the motile bacteria, so we can detect them in the dark ground microscopy. We take the sample, right? We see it in the dark ground microscopy, so they will appear as a motile spirochete. These are poorly stained with gram stain, that is why we go for Giemsa stain or right stain. We can culture them. To the afebrile period, microscopy sometimes fails to detect Borrelia, so we can confirm the Borrelia from blood. We can isolate it by culture. Serology is done for the detection of antibodies. We can go for ELISA and IFA for detection of antibodies in the serum. We can go for various other assays. We can go for molecular methods, which will detect the 16RS particular gene, specific gene by multiplex PCRL, which will identify the Borrelia causing relapsing fever. So basically, we go for serology. We go for molecular methods which will target the specific gene. Like these are 16S ribosomal RNA and GLPQ. These are the specific genes for the relapsing Borrelia causing relapsing fever. So antibiotics, the treatment of choice is doxycycline or erythromycin, and recommended schedule is single dose for epidemic relapsing fever and 7 to 10 days course for endemic relapsing fever. Then obviously control of vector is required. Now another important disease, Lyme disease, which is caused by Borrelia burgdorferi, and this was first observed in 1975 in Lyme, USA. So it's very common disease in USA. We also have in our country, but data is skewed. We don't have much of a data available because we haven't looked for this particular disease in our country. And rodents and deer, they are main reservoir, and it is transmitted by tick bite, Exodus ricinus complex. So this basically disease occurs in 3 stages. First is localized infection, where there is appearance of maculopapular, annular maculopapular lesion at the site of the tick bite, known as the erythema migrans. Then in stage 2, this will disseminate. After some weeks later, the disseminated infection take place. It develops through matogenous spread, and where the patient will present with secondary annular skin lesions, arthralgia, malaise, and third stages is persistent infection of third stage of persistent infections, where which may develop in months or years, and here the patient may present with arthritis of large joints. So there will be arthritis of large joints, which will last for months, which may be refractory to treatment also. These are the stages which is seen. So Lyme arthritis, it develops, it's a persistent disease. So diagnosis, we can isolate the bacteria from skin lesions, blood or CSF. We can culture them in BSK. It's a specific media for isolation of Borrelia burgdorferi, and we can also, molecular methods. Go for molecular methods for detection of common gene targets. Then serology for antibody detection. Most common method for diagnosis of Lyme disease is characteristic clinical picture with positive serological test. So characteristic clinical picture, there will be arthritis. One of the sometimes monoarthritis is the one the characteristically seen. Then that has to be followed with a serological test. So CDC, it recommends 2-test approach. First, ELISA to be performed, and if the ELISA is positive, then it has to be confirmed with the Western blot. Other things, parameters which you see is there's increase in the WBC count. Then the joint fluid, if you examine the joint fluid, there will be elevated polymorphonucleus cells, and the CSF may also show lymphocytosis. The treatment of choice is oral doxycycline is the drug of choice, and duration of treatment is for 14 days and 30 to 60 days for 14 days for skin lesions and 30 to 60 days for arthritis. Now coming to the Spirillum minus. It's a short actively motile bacteria, and it also has spirals, as the name suggests, Spirillum minus. and it is a gram-negative bacteria. This is visualized by a Giemsa or Fontana stain, or we can also look for these in dark ground microscopy, and they have not been cultured in laboratory media. So this particular bacteria was first observed in rat by Carter in India, and they basically causes rat bite fever. Spirillum minus, it causes rat bite fever. The incubation period there is of 1 to 4 weeks, and the rat bite wound it suppurates at the onset of fever with there will be fever with uh, regional lymphadenopathy, and actually rat bite fever is caused by two pathogens bacteria, that is the Spirillum minus and the Streptobacillary rat bite fever. So laboratory examination is by microscope examination of blood and exudate from the lesions. The intra that is one direct microscopy, or we can inoculate, do the animal inoculation in guinea pig of mice, where we inoculate it intraperitoneally. Then we sacrifice the animal. Then we look for make impression of the organs, and there we look for spiralium, or we can isolate the blood and the peritoneal fluid from the animal, and we look for these bacteria in we demonstrate these bacteria through smear. Then treatment, it responds to penicillin antibiotics. So treatment of choice, they are very good. They showed a good response to penicillin. Then you can go for erythromycin or tetracycline. And prevention is that stay away from rodents, because it occurs by bite of rodent. So it causes a rat bite fever. Otherwise, the hands and face should be washed after contact, and any scratches, if there, it should be they should be cleaned, and the antiseptic should be applied. So this was all about Spirillum minus. So Borrelia brucellosis and Spirillum minus, ये सारे ये बैक्टीरिया थे, राइट. अब बाकी दो हैं जो आज के टॉपिक, वो वायरसेस. So Epstein-Barr virus. So Epstein-Barr virus. This virus was first, the name Epstein and Barr, the one who isolated this virus from Burkitt's lymphoma. And this particular virus, it causes infectious mononucleosis. They are also associated with several tumors, human tumors, your nasopharyngeal carcinoma, Burkitt's lymphoma, Hodgkin's lymphoma, basal lymphoma, ये सब आप pathology में पढ़ोगे. And important thing is that these particular viruses, they have high affinity for lymphoid tissue. Okay, B cells, they have high affinity to B cells. So, and Epstein-Barr virus, they belong to family Herpesviridae. Okay, Herpesviridae एक family है जिसमें बहुत सारे आपके पैथोजेंस हैं, वायरसेस है, जिसमें herpes आता है. So herpes is there. Then there is a cytomegalovirus. So and Epstein-Barr virus. These are three major. Apart from them, there are also. And so this particular virus, it is a Herpesviridae, and Herpesviridae is basically has double-stranded. It's a double-stranded DNA virus, and it is enveloped virus. Virus का chapter recall करोगे आप general chapter. So the DNA virus is another one is double-stranded, single-stranded, so on and so forth. So this is double-stranded DNA virus, and it is enveloped with icosahedral symmetry. And EBV, it expresses three classes of antigen, that is latent phase antigen, early antigens, and late antigens. So coming to the pathogenesis, so virus, it basically enters by oropharyngeal contact to infected salivary secretions, and they bind to specific receptors, which are B cell receptor and CD21. These receptors are present on the pharyngeal epithelial cells, and it multiplies inside the bloodstreams, and then they infect your B cells. So they infect your B cells, and these viruses they remain in latent inside the lymphocytes, and later they become, they become transformed. So what will happen? These infected B cells, they will they are immortalized by the virus, and then they produce, there is polyclonal expansion of immunoglobulin. They will produce large number of immunoglobulins. So there is a polyclonal activation of B cells, which will produce large variety of immunoglobulins, which is seen in case of EBV infections. And in response to this, your CD8 T lymphocyte, they stimulate and they appear typical, they will appear typical. So in the blood you will look for these atypical lymphocytes, right? So this they in response to this infection, T lymphocytes they get stimulated and are seen as a atypical lymphocytes in the blood, which is a characteristic of infectious mononucleosis. So infectious mononucleosis, you see the atypical lymphocytes in the blood. Apart from this was in general the mode of infection, how the pathogenesis takes place. Along with this particular virus will show the oncogenicity. This persistent EBV infection induce malignant transformation of infected B cells and epithelial cells by expressing latent EBV antigen. So they are responsible for oncogenicity. That is why because of various lymphoma, the cancers. So clinical features is also known as kissing disease because it's transmitted through salivary contact or through salivary contact. So basically, main mode of infection is through the saliva of the infected patient who sheds the virus in the oropharyngeal secretion. So virus is not highly contagious, and droplets and aerosols are not efficient in transmitting the disease. So basically, intimate contact, oral contact, such as kissing, appears to be the main mode of transmission in case of EBV infection, and it usually occurs in young adults. Patient will present with headache, fever, malaise, and pharyngitis. There will be cervical lymphadenopathy, which is seen, followed by hepatosplenomegaly. Then, important thing is there is the presence of abnormal lymphocytes, which is seen in peripheral blood. And EBV, as I told you, it activates B lymphocytes. So it leads to secretion of immunoglobulins, right? Because there is a polyclonal expansion of immunoglobulin. So these are the various malignancies associated with EBV. There is bronchial lymphoma, nasopharyngeal lymphoma, Burkitt's lymphoma. It's a lymphoma of B cell lymphocytes. It's a tumor of jaw and seen in Africa and New Guinea. And nasopharyngeal is very commonly seen in China, in Southeast Asia, and the EBV viral DNA is present in the malignant epithelial cells of the tumor. Then your Hodgkin's lymphoma, then your non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These are the various EBV associated malignancies which are seen. Then other conditions which are associated with EBV is lymphoproliferative disorder. It is generally seen in your immunodeficient patient. Then oral hairy leukoplakia, which is seen in EBV infection. It is a wart-like growth of epithelial cells of the tongue, and it develops in some of the HIV infected patients and transplant recipients. So these conditions they are seen in immunocompromised individuals. The oral hairy leukoplakia of tongue is seen In case of EBV infection, then chronic fatigue syndrome is one infection which is also seen in immunocompromised individuals. Then it generally infects early childhood, adolescent, and transmissions that will be through oral contact. Other mode of transmission is that blood transfusion following bone marrow, or maybe it can also occur through bone marrow transplantation. So, how we will diagnose this infection? Leukocytosis is initially there will be leukopenia, which take place because there is drop in the number of polymorphs, but later there will be leukocytosis, and the predominant cell which we will see the abnormal or atypical lymphocytes. So atypical lymphocyte is seen in case of in the blood. We see the atypical lymphocytes, and these atypical cells are lymphoblast cells. They are which are derived from T cell activations. So T cell activate hoga in response to EBV infection, and which will lead to formation of atypical lymphocytes in the blood. And these cells are very important in diagnosis, and they constitute 30 to 90% of total leukocyte in the blood. Right. Another important that was all about blood. So main thing which you see is atypical lymphocytes. Then antibody detection. So antibody detection, we basically in infection mononucleosis, the heterophile antibodies, they appear in the blood, in the serum of the patients, and these are IgM antibodies. So we can look for these heterophile antibodies in the blood with the help of Paul Bunner test, and this is basically agglutination test, and these heterophile antibodies, they agglutinate the sheep erythrocytes. So in Paul Bunner test, we use sheep erythrocytes. We take the serum of the patient which has antibodies, these heterophile antibodies, and we heat it for some time. We again prepare the doubling dilutions, and then we add in it sheep erythrocytes, because these heterophile antibody due to EBV, they agglutinate with sheep erythrocytes. So then we incubate the tubes for some hours, for 4 hours, and then we look for the agglutination. So Paul Bunner test is done, which is a tube agglutination test, right? But sometimes what happens is, another important thing is that we need to confirm it, whether it is these antibodies are because of EBV or not, because it has been seen that some similar, because the heterophile antibody, right? These heterophile antibodies may also occur after injection of sera, or they may also occur normally in human, normally in individuals. So in order to confirm whether it is because of EBV, we do the differential absorption test. So we will absorb, we look for the absorption of agglutinin with guinea pig kidney cells or ox red cells, right? And if antibodies are because of EBV, they will be absorbed by the ox red cells. If the antibodies are not because of EBV, they are because of Forceman antibody. Forceman antibody is they are induced by the injection of horse serum, and if it is because of that, then the Forceman antibodies, they are agglutinated by the kidney kidney cells. So if infection mononucleosis antibody is removed by ox red cells, whereas normally occurring agglutinins, they are removed by guinea pig cells. So then we do the differential absorption test. We take guinea pig cells, we take ox red cells, and we look for the absorption. If antibody is because of infection mononucleosis, they will absorb by the ox red cell. But if they are because of other antibodies, like Forceman antibodies that are induced by injection of sera, or if they are normally present, they are absorbed by the kidney cells, guinea kidney cells. So we have to do this differential absorption test in order to identify, in order to confirm our antibody. Another test which is mono spot test. It is similar. It is also agglutination test, but in this we make use of horse erythrocytes, and it is it's a simple slide agglutination test which we do. So we basically can detect the antibody. So in this heterophile antibody, which appear in patients. So we can detect them by ball Bernal test, then we confirm it by differential absorption test, followed by monospot test. Okay, I have only 4-5 minutes. Then EBV specific antibody detection can be done with the help of ELISA and indirect immunofluorescent assays, which can detect we can detect the antibodies to viral capsid antigen with the help of ELISA. Then molecular methods, we can detect EBV DNA by PCR, quantitative PCR, so on and so forth. And we can detect antigen also. Basically, we can detect antigen, antibody, we can go for molecular. We go for Paul Bernal test in this. Serology, up yaad rakhna, because that is different. There's a Paul Bernal test involved in this. There's monospot test. Okay. The treatment is supportive treatment. Then acyclovir is an antiviral drug, which is helpful. It can be given. Then parvovirus, those 2 slides. It is a simple animal virus infecting humans and is responsible for childhood xanthema, that is erythema infectiosum, which is known as Fib disease, right? And it is parvovirus smallest virus. It's non-enveloped and it is only DNA virus which has single-stranded DNA. So parvovirus की खास बात क्या है कि it is only DNA virus with a single-stranded DNA, right? And it's one of the smallest virus. Then transmission of infection is by respiratory route, which is followed by blood transfusion. It may also occur by blood transfusion or through transplacental route. And these cells, they particularly they show tropism for erythroid progenitor cells, which are present in adult bone marrow. And basically they show tropism to erythroid progenitor cells, right? And which lead to result in destruction of red cells. So there will be reduction of red cells. So there will be there will be inhibition of erythropoiesis. So which will lead to your transinaplastic anemia or pure red cell anemia, right? And then it, as I told you, the characteristic feature is erythema infectiosum of Fib disease. So here will be, you will see the also known as slap chick. It gives a slap chick appearance, which on the face will spread to tongue and limbs, followed by the lymphadenopathy and arthralgia. So this is characteristic feature which you see in case of parvovirus. That is erythema infectiosum of Fib disease, which give the rash appear give a slap chick appearance. Apart from this, it causes transit aplastic crisis or pure red cell anemia, and this disease is highly contagious. So laboratory diagnosis, molecular methods are preferred for detection of this viral DNA in your serum, tissue or respiratory secretions. We can go for real-time PCR. Then antigen can be detected by ELISAs, or IFA antibody can be detected by ELISAs. IgM antibody, which will indicate the recent infection. So treatment, no antiviral is available. Symptomatic treatment is given. And immunoglobulin containing neutralizing antibodies to human, they can be given. They are available commercially. So this was all about your miscellaneous organism which causes infection in your blood system.